Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sports Porch. I hope that you are all doing well. Welcome back to another video in my NFL Power Rankings and Team Breakdown series. Today, number 29 is the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you guys do enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like and also subscribe. Turn on post notifications so that you don't miss my next team coming out tomorrow. Just a reminder, every single day until the NFL season starts, you're going to be seeing a video like this where I break down each team, give you some of their strengths, some of their weaknesses, storylines for the season, looking out for some players in fantasy, and then we're going to go over some win-loss stuff and predictions along that route. But let's go ahead and get to the Jaguars now. So they are in my tier 5 of the power rankings, which are in the description as always, of non-factors with interesting pieces to watch. So the coaches here, you've got Trent Baalke, Urban Meyer, Darrell Bevell, Joe Cullen, and Nick Sorensen. I believe all of those guys are in their first year, completely clean slate across the board. If I'm wrong about that, I guess I'll put it down below in editing and post. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the strengths of this team. So, I mean, first things first, they have one of the deepest wide receiver rooms in the entire NFL. You've got DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, Leviska Chanal, Philip Dorsett, Jamal Agnew, and even Travis Etienne, who they just drafted this year, could play out of the slot for them potentially. I mean, Philip Dorsett on his own could start for other NFL teams, and he's their fourth option. So while they don't necessarily have anybody who is like a number one alpha at this point in time, they don't have anyone who's truly an elite receiver, I would call it. Every single guy here is damn solid. So you have a lot of B to B plus players on this team. So definitely a strength there. And imagine somebody in the season goes down for another team. They're going to be calling up Jacksonville and asking for a Philip Dorsett, for a Jamal Agnew, guys like that who are deep in this wide receiver room. So just a big strength there for Jacksonville. Really great for the passing game. The running back room also has a lot of variety and depth in the skill sets. You've got downhill runners such as James Robinson and Carlos Hyde. And then you've also got newly drafted Travis Etienne, who, whether you agree with the pick or not, they are going to find a way to use him. He's going to be used in the running game. As a running back, you see him on a lot of passing downs especially. He is now easily the best passing threat that they have and was probably the best receiving running back in this draft class. So just as a whole, the passing game should be very good for Jacksonville this year, and they have a solid running back room to back that up. And then the last piece that I think is a strength for this team, and call it cliched, but I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence. I know we've been talking about him for the past 4 years now, past 3 years now, whatever it's been. But I feel like with this latest draft buzz being around Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, guys of those likes, we haven't really gotten a chance to sort of remember why Trevor Lawrence hasn't been talked about. And that's just because he's the number one player in this draft. I mean, I can go down the list of reasons to give you, and I think I will because, like I said, it's been a while, I think, since we truly appreciated just how great Trevor Lawrence is as a draft prospect. He is a big dude. His running is surprisingly good. If you remember in the national championship game I think it was, or the Ohio State game 2 years ago, he put on a show there. I think he rushed over 100 yards in that game. Put the team on his back. He makes good decisions. He's got a big-time arm. And, I mean, just from a marketing standpoint, everybody knows who he is. He's got the hair, the looks, all that stuff. And then on top of that, he's just a great guy. Looks like a great leader out there. And I think the best thing about Trevor Lawrence coming into this season and what makes him so special as a prospect is that his floor is already so high. I would say Mac Jones probably has the highest floor of this entire class. He's the most pro-ready day one. But you could certainly make an argument that Trevor Lawrence is in that conversation, if not right up there with him. So I just think the world of Trevor Lawrence. He is, I think, easily the QB1 in this class. For me, Zach Wilson put up a little bit of a fight, but at the end of the day, we can't get too crazy with ourselves And we have to acknowledge that Trevor Lawrence is truly a generational talent at the quarterback position. I'm not sure if he's quite on the level of Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning as a prospect, but if not, he is certainly pretty damn close. So then let's move into some of the weaknesses of this Jacksonville team. First off, the offensive line is still slightly below average. There are question spots on this team, especially at the tackle spots with Cam Robinson and Jawan Taylor. However, a guy to look out for who they drafted in the 3rd round, I believe, is Walker Little out of Stanford. He was touted as this uber high upside offensive line prospect in 2018, I believe, with Stanford. And then it was 2019, and he tore his ACL and wasn't able to play that year. But he did end up opting out of the 2020 season, as a lot of Pac-12 guys did. So he really is a raw prospect, but at the time, he was considered a top 20 prospect in this class back in 2019. So we'll just have to see how his development comes along. Everything is there, the traits, all that stuff. We just have to see the development. And I think that's why he, in my opinion, fell. I think that he was a 2nd-round prospect personally. But he did fall, so the offensive line is a little suspect. You might see Trevor running around a little bit back there in the pocket. He might have to take some big shots as well, but I don't think that's going to be a problem for him. So then number 2, Urban Meyer is a bit of an unknown. We know that he did a lot of spread offense stuff at Ohio State, at Florida, but we just don't know how it's going to translate to the NFL. And you have to ask the question, he's been out of coaching for a little while now. How much has he been doing in this time, right? How much has he kept up with the game of football? Is he like a Mike McCarthy, where he said that he was crunching the numbers down in his basement with the analytics, but then shows up and basically reverts back to his old self? Yes, that was a subtle shot, or a not so subtle shot, I guess, at Mike McCarthy, but the question does have to be asked, what can we reasonably expect out of Urban Meyer this year in terms of his play design and his play calling? Because at a college level, he was really good at that, but obviously his main strength, I think, at college was recruiting, which you can't even do that in the NFL, especially with how many great head coaches were on the market this year. It's going to be very interesting to see how Urban Meyer stacks up against the likes of a Brandon Staley, a Robert Saleh, and even guys who didn't move like Eric Bieniemy or Brian Dable, who you would have thought had a good chance to come to a team like the Jags, but they didn't. So it's definitely, I think, a weakness that you have a guy like Urban Meyer in there. He does bring a lot of great stuff. I think he's going to bring a good culture to this team. And a little bit of controversy maybe, because that's just how Urban Meyer is. It seems everywhere he goes, controversy follows him. But we'll have to wait and see with that. Maybe I could be completely wrong on that. And for the record, I'm hoping I'm completely wrong with that, because I think Jacksonville has a really exciting future ahead of them. And then the last weakness of this team is they don't really have that true shining star, yet. I think we all can figure, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, who is going to be that shining star in a couple of years, who's going to be their franchise guy. But right now they have a lot of B-plus guys. They don't have a lot of A's on this team. They don't have a lot of A-pluses, A-minuses. You could make an argument for Miles Jack, but he is playing linebacker, which is, let's face it, probably the least impactful position in the NFL today. So that is one thing to watch out for. They are still a young team. They are still trying to build up this roster depth. So we'll see how this goes. And then just an extra, the tight end spot isn't very good. I am surprised they didn't draft a guy like Pat Freiermuth. But that's that with the weaknesses for the Jaguars. Let's go ahead to some storylines. We already talked about this a little bit. What's Urban Meyer going to look like as an NFL head coach? I'm not going to dwell on that one too much because I already talked about it a little bit in the weaknesses section. But I think that Urban will be fine here. I don't think he's going to completely blow our minds with anything that he does. But I think that he'll have some solid stuff in this spread offense style that he has. He's going to utilize, I think, Travis Etienne really well. He's going to use him in the backfield, in the slot at times. So I think he's going to bring a lot of attention to this team, especially him and Trevor Lawrence. And I guess if you're the business side of things for Jacksonville, then this team is going to be one of the best in the NFL, that's for sure. And then what will Trevor Lawrence look like in year one? There's been all this hype for him, all of this time as the best pick since Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, the best prospect to come out ever, all this stuff. So it really is a question of, can he live up to the hype, right? We've seen guys fizzle out in the past. We've seen guys flourish in the past, such as Patrick Mahomes. So we'll just have to wait and see with Trevor. Like I said, I think Trevor is a special player. And I think with the offensive pieces around him, I mean, you could say the offensive line is a little bit of a weakness. But I think Trevor is big enough and he's also mobile enough where he's going to be able to either take some shots or move around outside of the pocket. So we'll see what happens there. I think Trevor's going to be great. And then my last question is, how will this secondary perform? There's a lot of young players here. You got the likes of Tyson Campbell, Andre Cisco, both of which they just drafted this year. Love those picks. CJ Henderson, who's been getting a lot of talk in this offseason about getting potentially traded this year out of Florida from, I think, a year before is when he was drafted, a top 10 pick. So we'll see what happens there, but that's going to be a big part of this defense, is how well this secondary performs, because they do have some solid pieces around the board in terms of their pass rush with K'Lavon Chaisson, among others, such as Josh Allen, who is, I mean, at this point been considered a little bit of a disappointment, I guess I would say, not a bust yet. But hopefully those guys can step up on your defense, and then this young secondary can perform well. But we'll see. It's always a thing with rookie corners that they kind of get cooked in the NFL, but we'll see if Andre Cisco and Tyson Campbell can hold their own. So 3 key players for this team. Number 1, I mean, Trevor Lawrence. Like, he is the hope of this team. He is the future of this team. I mean, it all revolves around him, basically. I'm not going to talk about Trevor anymore in this video. Number 2 is DJ Chark. I think because they don't yet have that true Alpha X receiver, DJ Chark can really step up into that role this year if he wants it, if he works for it. Because as I said before, there are 4 or 5 guys on this team who could start for other teams. And 2 of those guys who aren't even playing, in Agnew and Dorsett, full snap counts. So if he wants it, it's there for him. I mean, otherwise you do have Marvin Jones, who, even though he is getting a little bit older to this point, I think he can still do some really great stuff. And he can sort of fill in for now if DJ Chark isn't that guy this year. Maybe it takes him another year. My last key player is a guy I think kind of went unnoticed a little bit, and that's Shaq Griffin. He comes over from Seattle as a B to B plus cornerback, potentially could be better than that this year. And that's the biggest question. Can he take another step up with this defense this year? And can he lead this young secondary room? Like I said before, you've got guys who are in their first, second years with this team. If you just go on Our Lads and you look at the defensive back situation, you will see lots of guys in the green, which is Our Lads is drafted rookies for the year. So I think that Shaq Griffin is going to be very key this year and really swift the tide in how many wins and losses this team's get. Because I do think the offense will be good. I think Trevor will be good. ETN, all those guys will be good. But until they get that defense right, which starts, I think, with Shaq Griffin, then that's when we'll really have contender talks with this team. So the 3 best players for fantasy: Trevor Lawrence, he's probably going to go number 1 in your rookie drafts if you're in Dynasty for good reason. No need to talk about it. Travis Etienne, I think, is a guy who every year I try to draft a rookie running back in redraft leagues. He's probably going to be the guy I draft, either him or the Alabama guy, Najee Harris. There we go. I don't know why I forgot that for a second. But he's a guy who's going to go early, most likely. Although I don't think he'll go further than Najee just because he is splitting touches with James Robinson. And he's another guy who could potentially be on this list, but I decided to go with either Marvin Jones or DJ Chark at that last spot. I think I'm going to lean towards Chark just because he's a little younger, he's got a little better upside there, and I think Trevor's really going to gravitate towards him, and I think Urban's really going to scheme him up well. And then my sleeper player for Dynasty to draft is Leviska Chanal. He is the third option right now on this team, but he's still very young. He actually looked really great last year, a lot better than I think many people thought he would, mainly because of his injury concerns. And he really wasn't hurt at all last year. He stayed really healthy, was really solid. He is a guy who could step up into that number 2 role and overtake Marvin Jones. So he's an interesting guy to watch. I'm not sure what round exactly that he'll go, but we'll have to wait and see. Right, you'll have to see where he goes and let me know in the comments where he goes in your fantasy leagues, in your dynasty drafts. So let's move on then to the schedule. So for strength of schedule, the Jaguars have the 18th hardest schedule in the NFL, so it's not too bad. Some key games for them: Week 5 versus Tennessee is a big one. They have a chance to win that. Week 8 at Seattle. Seattle is going to be coming off of a Monday night game. That's going to be a big one for them. They really do have a chance to win that. Same thing, Week 11 at San Francisco. I know both of those are at home and they have to fly a long ways across the country, but there is potential in teams having a short week like that. So I do think there's a good chance they win both of those games and kind of shock people. So keep those 2 games on your radar. And then Week 18 at home against Indy, I think there's a real chance they can win that as well. A tough divisional matchup. It does depend on what Carson Wentz looks like when he comes back, but we'll have to see with that whole situation. That's just a whole nother that's a whole nother thing with Carson Wentz, man. He's something, I'll tell you that much. So my prediction for this team is 5-12. I do think they're going to get some breaks from playing those Monday night, or having their opponents, play those Monday night games. My floor for this team is 2 wins. I mean, I really do think that they could bottom out that hard, but my ceiling for them is 10 wins. There's a real possibility they beat the likes of Indy twice, Tennessee twice, and they do play the Texans twice as well, so that's something else to watch out for. The Vegas over-under is 6.5 wins. I would say don't bet this one because I really don't know. I guess right now I would say take the under with a little bit of caution. But if I was a betting man, I don't think that I would even try to bet on the Jags this year. Or even if I did bet, I would probably take the over just for the optimism. You've got Trevor Lawrence there and that whole offense. But my prediction for them is 5-12, so I'm a little bit more cautious about it. So just a final statement. This team really is so much better than they were last year. The offense is great. I mean, tight end and offensive line aren't the best in the world, but they're getting there. I mean, everyone is just still young, right? They're still young. They're learning the offense. Urban Meyer in his first stint as an NFL head coach, so that's going to be a big question mark for this team. How do they look coming out week 1? That's going to be a game. They play the Texans week 1. I'm really going to be watching to see how they take that opponent and how seriously they play them, what they look like, what kind of energy they're bringing, what the culture just looks like in general from watching a game. So this is a very interesting team. I think that within a year, at the very soonest, we could see them as a playoff team. And I think at the latest 2 years. They have a really bright future. I love everything about what this team has built in this offseason. Like I said, the ETN pick's a little bit questionable for me, but I think they'll find a way to justify it with how they use him. I think it is very likely they're a playoff team within year 1 or year 2, but that's all I have for you guys today. What did you think of this analysis of the Jacksonville Jaguars? What do you think of their ranking? Too high, too low? Let me know down below in the comments. Once again, if you liked what you saw, just make sure you like the video, subscribe. Every single day, new video is coming out. Tomorrow, team number 28. So until then, I hope that you guys all have a great day, and we will see you guys on the next one.